Show. The show is brought to you by TrevorCrow.com and also Julina Ogilvie. Julina's sitting next to me, and we're going to get started in a second. But first, a couple of things I want to talk about. I was very honored to dance for the Dancing with Our Stars at Ableist this past weekend. We raised over $200,000 for this incredible group of people that help young adults with disabilities. So it was a very proud moment for me and for the group of us who were all dancing and got together. Secondly, I want to mention that the question about the link between autism and Tylenol is truly, truly ridiculous, unscientific, and please, people, do your research and find out what really happens and what causes autism. We get closer every year to understanding the causes of it, and it's mostly genetic, and that's got a whole nother discussion buried in there. Okay, I'm going to turn to Julina. Hey, welcome back.
Hi, Trevor. Thanks for having me.
I am delighted to have you back. Julina from Principal Wealth Management is here with me. This is the second of our three-part series. We learned a lot the first time meeting where Julina explained to us, if you're starting your career early 20s to 40s, what are the basic steps you need to get set up for? And then today we're going to expand on that and talk about 40s to 60s. So just a quick recap of what you were saying and what was really important for these young people to think about and get themselves set up for financial health, basically.
Sure. I think a couple things I would bring back that are incredibly important, and the earlier you start, the better. So the first is time. Time is on our side. The power of compounding, which is Albert Einstein's eighth wonder of the world. And just to give you an example, if you start investing at age 25 instead of age 35, by the time, and you're invested in the market, and there's a whole bunch of statistics around it, but roughly speaking, you'll have double the retirement savings by the age of 65. And that's just with 10 years earlier. That's the first thing, time. The second is the importance of creating a budget. And there's a very, very simple rule of thumb, which is the 50-30-20 rule, where you take your expenses and you allocate 50% to your needs, right? Your day-to-day living expenses. 30% are your wants. We want you to enjoy life. But then the most important part, I think, is making sure you allocate 20% to savings. And I think that's the crucial part that gets missed by a lot of people. And if you don't know your budget, you can't save accordingly.
Yeah. So it's a really important thing to sit yourself down, maybe with your partner, really understand what your budget is. Now, a lot of young people are showing up into the big, wide, real world with a lot of student debt. Some of them even have credit card debt. I have clients who come in for early marriage counseling, and they're having to tackle a lot of these issues. What do you say to them?
I would say in terms of tackling the credit card issues, it has to go back to the budget, and it has to go back to having an understanding of what are you really spending relative to the income that is coming in. And so when you're tackling credit cards, that the interest rate on these credit card debt is so high right now.
What is the average interest rate on these credit cards these days?
Oh boy.
That's bad.
I don't know the average, but I will say when I've looked at with clients or prospects that we're talking to and we're looking at the credit card debt, it's very common to see 22-24%.
22-24%. And a lot of, myself included, I do keep some balances on my credit cards, and it's just making me go, okay, pay those things down.
Yeah, and I think the fine print is just getting smaller and smaller for us to see, which makes it harder to acknowledge.
Oh, my God. So really, you're kind of saying, pick out the high interest rates, whatever the debt, whatever it is, pay those things down first.
If you can, yes. Yeah. And you and I were talking, there are individuals that have multiple layers of debt. And there is another philosophy. Well, hey, maybe if I pay off the smallest one first, you call it a win. Mm-hmm. You and I talk a lot about having empowerment of our finances. And if that's important, then I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I do think it's really important to have these little moments when you're like, whoa, I just got rid of that debt. There's a real dopamine hit. And the more you feel good about it, like that, literally a body felt experience of like, hey, that was good. That feels really good to pay that thing down.
Yeah, it encourages you to keep going.
Yeah. So in therapy, we call it somatic experiencing.
I like it.
So that happy feeling in your body when you get something done that you set out to do. So that's that action oriented. You're not a victim. You're capable. You have agency, and setting up a budget, especially as a younger person. So there's a couple things you're saying. Start saving. The eighth wonder of the world is compounding interest.
Correct.
And as you save, if you start at 25, it doubles by the time you're 35. So start early. So now we've got everybody set up around the 40-year-old mark. Let's say many of our listeners have started families, or maybe they decided not to, but maybe they bought a house or a car. What do you advise this age group between 40 and 60? What are their goals, tasks? What do they need to be set up for?
So this is the interesting sort of time horizon where you really do have multiple goals overlapping each other. If you haven't started planning for retirement, right, it seems so ridiculous to say at the age of 40, because at the age of 40, maybe you're just getting married, you're having a child, you're buying your first home, you have to start thinking about college education. It always seems crazy. I said this when we were talking about the 20-year-old, but you have to think of retirement. It's not linear. You have to bring in sort of a multifaceted approach. The one thing I always hear is, I just want to know I'm not going to run out of money. Maybe it's not so much the 40-year-old because they're too busy thinking of so many multiple goals. But usually when you start approaching the 60s and beyond, that's the one thing you hear. And I think it's with good reason. We all know that we're living longer, but I think when you actually look at the statistics, I'm completely floored. JP Morgan has a study that they've been doing for decades. And when I first got into this business and looked at their study of longevity, they didn't even talk about living to 100.
Nobody did.
And now, if you're married today at the age of 65, there is a 15% chance that one of you will reach the age of 100.
That is old. I did not realize that. It's a pretty high percentage. Oh my goodness. Bob is nodding. Bob, are you going to last 100?
Yeah, absolutely. I will be here. Yes.
Well, and I would also, the study is suggesting that is a 65-year-old couple today. And I can't imagine what that study will look like when my teenagers approach the age of 65.
Right.
So the idea of running out of money is I think, a very justifiable concern. And if I can pair with that the study that Fidelity gave last year on, are the Gen Xers ready for retirement? So that 45 to 60-year-old age, Fidelity looked, the average 401k and the average IRA of an individual in that time frame is less than $200,000.
Okay, so talk to me. Is that too much, too little? Is this a shock to you? How does that land on you?
Yeah, so one thing I'll say, I'm picking on Fidelity because they're our custodian, and they come out with these studies every so often. But admittedly, these studies are all over the place.
Okay.
I have yet, though, to see a study where I've thought, wow, that's a lot. The average investor is going to be completely fine in retirement. I think these numbers are always too low.
Too low. Okay.
And if you then couple with the fact that we live in Fairfield County, I think that we all know what living expenses are here. Everyone's nodding their head in this room.
ridiculous here in Fairfield County. Okay, so if you're, say, right and smack in the middle in our demographic between, say, 50-year-old, what would you like to see in a 401k? How large would you like it to be prepared to live longer?
Yeah, I'm going to answer in the generic financial advisor way and say it depends. It depends on what your spending habits are. The way you want to live in retirement. What are your true goals? And I will say this: if you don't know what your budget is at this point and how you're saving relative to how you're spending, I highly encourage starting there. And then from there, you can figure out, it really helps if you partner with someone to create a financial plan, because then you have an idea of how much you truly need in retirement. And depending on how far away you are, right, what do you need to do to get there? A lot of the considerations are, if you're invested in a 401k or an IRA, what does your asset allocation look like? How are you investing in stocks relative to bonds? Right. From a broad perspective, because that is going to determine a lot of the return. But it's also going to include an element of risk that you should have an awareness of.
Okay, so as you're moving, say, towards your later 50s into, because again, today we're talking a age group 40 to 60. Maybe you should get less risky as get closer to 60. You should be thinking about things that are not going to be, high return, but really stable. So you're safe and you can really grow what you need to grow to retire on it.
It's a general rule of thumb, and what that allocation looks like. Again, it depends. It depends on, do you want to leave a legacy for your family? Do you not want to drain your portfolio completely? Or are you going to be aggressively pulling from that retirement account to live off of in your retirement? And that's always a challenging one, because that means you need a higher rate of return, but it also means it's adding a higher rate of risk. And finding that balance, sometimes that's where a professional can help.
Yeah, you definitely, everybody listening right now, we're talking to Julina Ogilvie of Principal Wealth Managers. We're talking about financial health, so to speak, throughout the sort of big decades from 20 to 40 to 40 to 60. Today, we're talking 40 to 60, and really how to be prepared, because now we're talking about retirement, and it's going to be coming up pretty quickly before we realize it. So 40 to 60, most people are still working. I think most people know this, but I'm a couples counselor. This is the time that a lot of people divorce, actually, and split up. So that can be a financially devastating event for everyone involved. Talk to me about what you say to your clients that are dealing with some of those challenges.
One of the things I found in my role is that in a divorce, there is usually one spouse that is more financially savvy than the other. And the one that is not as savvy may make decisions before they talk to a financial professional.
Okay.
And I would whether you're taking that IRA and you're spending it, and all of a sudden you realize you're not 59 and a half. Now you have to pay penalty. You're paying taxes on top of it, relative to maybe there's money in a taxable account that you could consider. I think those are very important questions that you need to address before you make the decisions. I would also suggest, too, it's not just the retirement accounts that are important, but let's go back to college education. Should you look at a 529? If you're in a high deductible plan, do you look at an HSA? There are other types of vehicles that lets your money grow tax deferred for specific goals, whether it's for college education or healthcare.
So it's really a good point here, and I don't believe a lot of people realize how important a financial advisor is. I also hear that a lot of people are looking to AI, Claude AI, or whatever, how should I retire, et cetera. And I've also heard some negative feedback on that Claude AI, maybe it doesn't have the best financial advice for you. So it is a very good idea to talk to a real person like Julina today and really go through what you have, what your what your assets are, what your liabilities are, and what your goals are.
Yeah, and listen, I use AI personally. I will say this, one of our roles, I think, as a financial professional is sometimes we have to do some hand-holding. If the market corrects 20%, which it will at some point for some reason or other, is AI going to hold your hand to say, no, you really should stick to your investments and your strategy that you created? Or, hey, you really haven't contributed to your IRA or 401k this year. You might need an extra nudge or two, and you're not going to get that from AI.
I love that. It's a really important reminder, which anybody out there is thinking about this and really wants to plan and be, again, financially healthy. And to me, finance is when you're feeling secure, that you don't have a lot of worries from that perspective in your life. You can do the things you need to do and do it well because you're not being worried about, am I going to be okay in retirement? So planning ahead, talking to a financial advisor. And Julina, how do people get in touch with you?
You can go to our website, which is principalwealthpartners.com, and all of our information is on there. It's or I also have a website, julinaogilvie.net.
Okay, perfect. So anybody listening, tuning in right now, Trevor Crow, Trevor and Friends, talking to Julina Ogilvie about planning 40s to 60s, sort of midlife. What should you be doing? How should you be set up? And really starting to think about long term, like you're going to retire, you need a retirement fund. But it's also a big time for colleges And I have, again, couples who have just slogged through years of getting 2 or 3, sometimes 4 kids through college. And it's such a, I've just seen a couple people just be like, phew, finally, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you see that?
Oh, that's a big emotional one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I always suggest to people that if you are maybe in your 40s and you're having that child, open that 529 right away.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the power of compounding, it works the same way.
Beautiful thing. 529. It's a great vehicle. A child is born. I'm just thinking of literally a friend of mine's daughter's going to have a baby soon. I'm like, maybe that's a good idea to get.
I think it's a great idea.
That's a great baby gift, right? A 529.
And I would say there's a lot of concern about, well, what if my child doesn't go to college? What if I don't use those
what
funds?
do you do?
That's a whole separate probably radio show. But I will say this is more recently with the Secure Act, you are allowed to roll some of those assets into an IRA for that beneficiary.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Which is fantastic. Yeah.
All right. So here's another question. If this baby lives in a different state, would the 529 be okay to open here?
Yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay. I'm learning a lot.
You bring up a good point because there are different state different state considerations that you need to take into thought. Mm-hmm. Connecticut may be a little bit different than New York, for example, but again, a financial professional can help with what those differences are.
Great advice. And just remembering, I want to say Happy Rosh Hashanah to everybody today. Yeah. Right. I meant to say that right off the top. But okay, so we're looking now, we're going to move into, next time you come on the show, we're going to be talking to 60 and above. And once upon a time, when Social Security was started, I think retirement was considered to be 62, but we didn't live as a population past like the age of 57 on average. Right.
That's certainly changing.
and I do know that the government, Social Security and whatnot, we're not going to get into the weeds of this, but we could pushing that age back because, well, in fact, a lot of us are healthier and live longer. Right.
Yeah.
And we're going to discuss more of this because I personally I'm 63 now. Oh my goodness. And thinking about, what age do you start pulling out of Social Security and all that business? Yeah. But I still want to come back to 40s to 60s. Any other thoughts for couples or individuals of things that you want to make top of line with pay down credit card, pay down student debt, anything else?
I think the other part I would include, and I'm not an attorney by any means, but having an estate plan in place is critical. I run into so many individuals that don't have a will, they don't have a power of attorney, healthcare proxy, and of course, I unfortunately see it occur at the wrong time when one really needs to be made. And so I would encourage having those pieces in place as well. And, for example, at our firm, we have an attorney on our staff to ensure that our clients, we are having those conversations to make sure that that's done.
Very smart, super smart. So estate planning is another big piece of this, right? Like everybody out there, I guess at any age you should have a will. I mean, we could die at any point, but right as we get a little bit, later in 40s, 50s, it's a wise thing, especially if you have some assets and you would like to make sure that they're safe and they're going to go places that you want them to go. But you also need to have this, power of attorney or somebody who's going to decide what decisions to make.
And one thought, again, I'm not an attorney, but one suggestion I would make is if you are in your 40s and 50s and 60s and you've got children going off to college, you have 18-year-olds, you should have a power of attorney for them.
No, that's a very interesting topic, and I just recently heard about this from actually one of my clients. And why is that? Because she was starting to explain this to me, and I never heard this idea before.
Well, once they're 18, they're an adult. And so if something were to happen to them, God forbid they're traveling abroad for college or they're across the country and they end up in a hospital, that power of attorney can make those conversations a lot easier with medical professionals.
Yes. So anybody listening and sending their kids off to college, this is an important discussion with your family members. This also can be a little problematic if you have two parents that are divorced that don't agree with one another. So there's a lot of discussion to be had. Is it possible to do a power of attorney for both parents if they're divorced? Can that be done?
That's probably a good question for an attorney.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll leave that
We'll
to them.
leave that to them. But these are concerns, and again, it really is sort of 50s that we see our kids going to college. Things can happen. You want to be able to talk to medical professionals about what's happening with your child. So
Absolutely.
that's a new thing. When I was going to college, nobody asked me for that, and it didn't even cross my mind. Even my own children. So I've got a 28-year-old and a 26-year-old, and it never occurred to me to ask about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
fortunately, you haven't needed it.
Thank you, knock on wood.
Yes.
I know, knocking on wood. So anything else that we should be, not, I don't want to say admonish, but to recommend ultimately to give these every age and stage group of people to say, what could you do to empower yourselves, even your next gen, like talking about your kids, your college age kids about these issues? What do you think?
I would say if you're listening to this and you don't feel that you're where you should be, don't wait. You can start now. It's never too late. I think that's one of the most important things, because again, if we're conceptually living until we're 100, even if you're in your 50s or your 60s, you're still talking about decades of an opportunity of the power of compounding if you have the money working in the right vehicles.
That is such a great point, and it's never too late.
No.
And you can always start saving, and that power of compounding is amazing. And a lot of us are going to live well past our 95 into 100. It's shocking, but
Those are averages.
averages. And Bob's definitely going to be there. He said 100.
Well, I'm not going to give up on the idea. Let's put it that way.
Anyway, Julina, thank you so much for being with us on the show. How do people reach you once again?
Either principalwealthpartners.com or julinaogilvie.net is a good way to start.
Awesome. And today's show is brought to you by Julina and myself, Trevor Crow. We're going to go to a station break. Stay tuned. Coming on the show in just a few minutes is Hector Arzeno, our state representative from the 151.